Hello, fifth graders. I am reading from Esperanza Rising. I am starting on page 110. About halfway through the page, the paragraph starts out, "It was." I'll give you guys a second to find it and get there. Okay, here we go. It was still early, so the air was cool, but the sun was bright and she knew it would be hot soon. The hens pecked and poked around the front steps. They must have been happy to be off the train. Esperanza shooed them out of her way as she turned and walked next door. The babies were still in their pajamas. Isabel was struggling to feed Lupe her oatmeal, while Pepe crawled on the floor. Splotches of the cereal still stuck to his cheeks. As soon as he saw Esperanza, he reached up for her. "Let's clean them up," said Isabel, "and then I'll show you the camp." First, Isabel took Esperanza to the platform she was to sweep, and showed her where the brooms were stored. Then they walked through the rows of cabins, each with a baby on her hip. As they passed open doors, Esperanza could already smell the beans and onions that someone had started simmering for dinner. Women were dragging big metal washtubs beneath the shade trees. A group of young boys kicked a ball up and down the dirt road, stirring up dust. A little girl wearing a man's undershirt as a dress ran up to Isabel and took her hand. "This is Sylvia. She is my best friend. Next week, we will go to school together." Sylvia switched around and grabbed Esperanza's free hand. Esperanza looked down at Sylvia's dirty hands. Sylvia grinned up at her, and Esperanza's first thought was to pull her hand away and wash it as soon as possible. Then she remembered Mama's kindness to the peasant girl on the train and her disappointment in Esperanza. She didn't want Sylvia to start crying if she were to pull away. She looked around at the dusty camp and thought that it must be hard to stay clean in such a place. She squeezed Sylvia's hand and said, "I have a best friend too. Her name is Marisol, and she lives in Aguas Calientes." Isabel introduced Esperanza to Irene and Melina, two women who were hanging clothes to dry on a long line stretched between the cabins and a tree. Irene had long gray hair tied in a tail. Melina didn't look much older than Miguel, and she already had a baby of her own. "We heard the story of how you came from Aguas Calientes," said Melina. "My husband is from there. He used to work for Señor Rodriguez." Esperanza's face lit up at the news. "He knew my father since he was a boy. Do you think your husband knew Marisol, Señor Rodriguez's daughter?" Melina laughed. No, I'm sure he didn't. He was un campesino, a field servant. He would not know the family." Esperanza felt awkward and didn't mean to make Melina admit that her husband was a servant. But Melina didn't seem bothered and began recalling other farms her husband had worked on in Aguas Calientes. Isabel pulled on Esperanza's arm. "We need to change the babies." As they walked back to the cabin, she said, "They are mother and daughter. They come over to talk and crochet with my mother all the time." "How do they know all about us already?" Isabel raised her hand and made her fingers tap up and down on her thumb as if a mouth were talking. "Everyone in camp knows each other's business." "Do you know how to change a diaper?" asked Esperanza when they got back to the cabin. "Certainly," said Isabel. "I will change them and you can rinse out the diapers. We need to do some laundry, too." Esperanza watched as the young girl laid the babies down one at a time, unpinned their diapers, wiped their bottoms clean, and pinned on fresh diapers. Isabel handed Esperanza the smelly bundles and said, "Take them to the toilets and dump them, and I'll fill the washtub." Esperanza held them at arm's length and almost ran to the toilets. Several more onion trucks passed by, their smell accosting her eyes and nose as much as the diapers. By the time she got back, Isabel had already filled 2 washtubs with water from an outside pipe and was swirling soap around in one of them. A washboard was propped inside.